Hello, Alpod listeners. Happy Friday. Welcome back. This is the Alpod, the official podcast of Temple Athletics. We're coming to you twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube. You can check it out. David and Amelia have the Tuesday show. They came up with their own theme song. They're singing jingles now. I promise I won't do any of that, but you got to check out David and Amelia's student-athlete to student-athlete conversations, giving you the inside stories, hot takes, all that good stuff every Tuesday. My guest today is head women's soccer coach Chris Shaw. Coach Shaw is in his second season here at Temple after 4 seasons at Robert Morris, previously the head coach at UNLV, also Barton College and Mount Olive, both in North Carolina. Over 15 seasons as a head coach, more than 150 wins. Here is our guest, Chris Shaw, following this quick word from our Alpod sponsors.
And we're back with the action. Coke Zero Sugar might be the best Coke ever.
That's right, Jim. With an irresistible taste and zero sugar, Coke Zero Sugar is a must-try for any sports fan. So make sure you... Wait, Jim, I didn't mean try it right now. We're still on the air.
Best Coke ever? Take a taste, Jen.
Really?
No, not right now, Jen. We got a game to call.
One of the things I've learned now from having done this, I think you're 4 or 5 here, is how many people's bios are wrong. So I would say take me back to Fayetteville, North Carolina. Is that correct? Is that where you were actually born?
Oh, no.
See, there's a lot of erroneous information out there. So
Yeah.
where were you born?
So I was actually born in Anchorage, Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Decidedly not Fayetteville.
Decidedly not Fayetteville. Fayetteville would have come, 15 years after that.
Oh, okay.
So,
Is this military?
yeah,
Okay.
military brat. So my father's first duty station was Elmendorf Air Force Base. He was a air defender coming out of West Point. And this was, I guess, right, kind of towards the end of the Vietnam War. And I guess they were worried about Russia coming over into Alaska and sent him up there to, man the missiles. So, yeah, I was born in Alaska. I think 9 months later we moved to El Paso, Texas. We were there for a few years. Then, yeah, Fayetteville, North Carolina was probably 4, 5, 6 stops down.
What's the first one you
down
have
the
memory
road.
of? Because clearly Anchorage,
Yeah.
no, 9 months. Probably not El Paso if
Not
you were
El
only there for
Paso.
2 years. So where's the first place that kind of you can click into living?
I think it would have been Norman, Oklahoma.
Okay.
So my father was going to graduate school there at OU. So one of my first memories was walking up to go to an OU football game, and my dad kind of carrying me in his hands and going up into the stadium. So yeah, that was quite a while ago. But yeah, I think those are my first memories of, life.
So this is interesting because we just had Linda Hampton-Keith, volleyball coach, on, and same thing, military families, so moved around, and I'm wondering what the experience was like for you. Did you like that? I'm sure there's good and bad aspects to it. You get to kind of start from scratch. You get to try on some new personalities, or was it hard for you where you're constantly on that kind of 2-4 year cycle and making new friends and all that? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, well, I think what it prepared me for was life as a coach, right? So moving around from job to job, and I think it's one of those things where when you're in it, you probably think, man, this I don't want to have to leave my friends again and start over again. But looking back on it, it was such a unique opportunity to visit different places, live in different places, experience different cities, different states, different countries. It made me, I think, really appreciate how much more there is to do and see out there, and again, really helped me with my career. And when you're working someplace and you've got that next opportunity for maybe a bigger university or a better fit, to really look forward to that and say, okay, here's another opportunity to not only progress professionally, but also to get to experience a different state, a different city, a different university, and all the things that a different city has to offer. So I've enjoyed it, I've embraced it, and it's been a great opportunity.
Yeah, you can't pin you down. I mean, looking at the trajectory, and like you said, it's kind of part and parcel of being a coach, right? It's going to be built in. You're going to move whether you want to or not. Ultimately, you got to hop around, but
sometimes by choice, sometimes not by choice.
And
right?
you've hit all the different corners though along the way. So, obviously, you're playing sports as a kid. Did that help ease some of those transitions? That's always a quick shorthand to be able to go out and just, play sports is probably the quickest way to make friends and meet people. Was soccer the way to do that? Were you playing everything? What was kind of that path as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. You hit the nail on the head with that. It was, you go into a new town, a new city, and you go into a team where automatically you have things in common. You start to develop friendships, through those common interests. But yeah, growing up, I was doing everything. I mean, my first recollections, or I guess my first sport was baseball. And we were in New York at the time. My dad was teaching at West Point, and I was a huge Yankees fan. I mean, that's how I grew up.
Sure. Well, what years was this now?
Well, this was when the Yankees were really good. This was Reggie Jackson.
I was going to say, you get the World Championships in 77 and 78. Yeah,
yep,
sure.
Yep,
Sure, yeah,
yep.
yeah.
So I was a huge fan. And it's funny too because I remember my best friend at that time. We were big into baseball cards, always trading. So I'd give him. He was a huge Pirates fan.
Okay.
And so this was Willie
Stargell, and
yeah,
some great Pirates teams. Yeah.
So he was a huge Pirates fan. I was a huge Yankees fan, and we would just trade our my Pirates for his Yankees and vice versa. And then fast forward, I don't know, 30, 40 years later, and I'm living in Pittsburgh, and now I'm going to Pittsburgh games. I've been to more Pittsburgh games than I have Yankees games, right? So, but yeah, I was playing all kinds of sports, and then we moved to Germany, and obviously soccer's king in Germany, and that's where I think really started to kind of focus in on soccer and develop a passion for the sport.
How old were you in those years in Germany?
Well, that would have been 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grades. I have no idea what that corresponds to in terms of age. I think I remember becoming a teenager when I was in Germany, right? So that would have been 13.
10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Somewhere around there.
Now, was it enough of like a military base where it was all expats and English speakers? Were you speaking German? What was that experience like?
Yeah, no, it was, we were all we were going to American schools, but we were surrounded by Americans on a military base. But, you'd still go out into the town and have to get by.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I'll share this story. My German was never very good, and I didn't. At that age, I didn't really want to learn. Take the effort to
extra
learn.
homework, basically. Sure.
Yeah. So I do remember going into. They had these great pools, indoor pools, and saunas and stuff there, and I'm in the locker room and I'm getting changed to go into the pool, and there's some young German boys sitting there, and they start talking to me, and I said, "Ich bin eine Amerikanerin," which means I'm an American girl. So what I should have said was "Ich bin ein Amerikaner." I think that's the correct pronunciation, which is I'm an American boy, the male and the male and female.
Sure, yeah.
So they kind of looked at me weird, like, do you know which locker room you're in right now, But yeah, so my German wasn't great. I also remember that in Germany they had all these little fountains that had little, water spigots coming out of them, and it said, "Nicht Trinkwasser," which means don't drink the water. And for some reason, I thought that meant drinking water.
Sure,
and so I'm there,
drink water.
Yeah, so I'm there, slurping it up. So yeah, it was interesting, living in Germany and experiencing that. But it was great. And we've got now, a German player on the team, so I'm breaking out my, what little German I remember, so I can count to 10 when she's juggling, and then after that, I'm like, I can't remember the rest of it. But but yeah, it's been really neat to talk with Val and about Germany and my memories from there, and again try to brush up on my German. I think, excuse me, the one line that for some reason stuck with me from from class was "Ich habe eine große Hund," which is I have a big dog. Which I don't know why that stuck with me. I've never had a big dog.
It's like the Donde está la biblioteca of Germany. It's like that one sentence.
That's the one sentence I remember most from my German and my French. I also took French when I was in junior high school, and the one French line that stuck with me was "Puis-je jeter mon crayon," which may I sharpen my pencil. So, neither one of those.
You could really get by in some very specific situations.
Exactly. I was going to say neither one of those is going to help me too much on my European travels. But if I ever did, need a sharpened pencil in France or want people to know that I have a dog in Germany, I'd be on it.
There you go. You're set. Yeah. But as you said, soccer is king there. And what was the youth sport? Now, the youth sport culture writ large has changed since, we were younger compared to what it is today. But was that a big difference, in terms of what it was like? You're playing soccer, as a 7, 8, 9-year-old. I'm thinking of Saturday morning soccer where the kids are just chasing around a ball here that my kids are doing now. Was it different when you got to Germany? Was the opportunity to play at that age, was it more serious? What was the change there from a, kid's perspective?
Yeah. It's interesting that you asked that because I was playing, it was called DYA, Dependent Youth Activities, which was the American military organization recreational opportunity for kids. And I guess, I was we had a German coach and he saw something in me and he said, "Hey, why don't you come out?" We lived in Darmstadt at the time. So this was when I was 6th and 7th grade. And he said, "Hey, I'd like you to bring you out to the Darmstadt." It was a pro club, and they had a youth team, and he wanted me to train with that team. And so I went out and trained with them, and I remember it just being so completely different than what we were doing. DYA was rec, right? So we were just rolling the ball out and playing, and then I go out with this German team, and we spent the first 30 minutes just literally dribbling the ball across the field and back, and I was like, this is kind of boring, But,
sure.
But again, they're trying to give you the fundamentals, the basics, and so you're spending a lot of time just doing that, repetition. But the other issue was none of these kids spoke English. I didn't speak any German, so the coach is trying to explain to me, the activity, the German. I mean, the boys were great, and they were, they thought it was kind of cool that there was an American kid out there, but unfortunately, at that stage in my life, it was a little bit too much out of my comfort zone. And, I look back on it, I go, I really wish my parents would have been like, you got to do this a couple more times before you'd give up on it. And so I ended up not going back. It's one of my great regrets, right? I like to think that if I would have kept going, I might have been playing in the Bundesliga.
Yes, this is the kind of sliding doors moment for your whole life. Yeah.
But no, it's It was a big, it was recreational versus what they're doing in a professional environment from, where basically they've got everything from youth all the way up to the pro team and how they trained and all that. It was just very, very different. But again, for a, 13-year-old, it was something I wasn't ready for at that time.
That's the thing is I don't know how you could be, coming from that. And so you have on the other side of that now you come back to the States after that and you have a little gap there to finish up high school and then decide where to go for college. But did that at what point did it spark? You must have known that you were pretty good. You got selected out of this DYA to at least have the opportunity to train. Did that kind of stick with you that, hey, this is something that I could probably look at doing at the next level? Did you kind of go back with that in mind, or when did that start to become, a possibility?
Yeah. I think, I remember that's that's actually when I moved to Fayetteville. So my dad got stationed at Fort Bragg. And again, straight into finding a soccer team that I could play for. We had the Fayetteville Fort Bragg Roadrunners was the club team. And, I had a coach that was a volunteer that just, was so invested in the team that we had and giving us videos to learn and taking so much time out of his own day to teach us. And I thought I was pretty good at the time. I think at that age everyone thinks they can go play in the ACC or and I was like I thought I'm probably good enough to play at Duke. I don't know if I have the grades to go to Duke. I can't remember. It was one of those two. Either I thought I was good enough to play at Duke but didn't have the grades, or I thought I was had the grades to go to Duke, but wasn't good enough. It was something that I was missing. Yeah. Well, what I was missing was both. I didn't have the grades or the ability to play at Duke, but I didn't know that. But yeah, I don't even think that was really on the radar at that point. I was just playing and enjoying it and learning and growing as a player. And then, it just so happened that in Fayetteville is Methodist University, which had just, I think my junior or senior year in high school, they had just hired a new coach. And he was a Northern Irish guy that had come from UNCG, who had won multiple national championships. And he took over Methodist and just started bringing in some foreigners, a lot of Irish, some English, and they started getting good. And my senior year, they were, I think, broke into the national rankings for the first time ever. And I said, yeah, you know what? Looking at them, I could play at that level. I could go there, and I'd be, I thought I'll go there and I'll be a superstar, right? Like Division III, and so told the coach I wanted to come play there, and he kind of said, oh, yeah, if you want to come, you can come. You're not really a blue chip recruit, but yeah, we got a spot for you. And I was like, all right, I'll show you. And then got there, and I'm competing against, we had all Americans on the team, and I was like, oh wow, this is a big jump, but it again, it's one of those things. Ended up in Fayetteville, and then just happened to have this program in my backyard where I'm going to games and watching them, and then ended up going there to play. So it was kind of fortuitous that we ended up in Fayetteville,
Yeah, and probably at that point, then you count the 2 or so years that you were there, and then 4 years in school. That had to feel like kind of an eternity where you were starting to put down some roots compared to
100%.
Bouncing around.
Yeah, that was home. And that's why Fayetteville's listed, right? Because people always ask me, where are you from? I go, well, you want to know where I was born, where I've lived the longest, where I'm at now, where I go home for the holidays. It's all different. They're all different. But Fayetteville for the longest time was, I graduated high school from Fayetteville. I graduated college in Fayetteville. But now I don't have any ties to Fayetteville besides those. My family's since left, and they're in Nashville, and my sister's in Nashville, and all my nieces and nephews are in Nashville. So, Fayetteville's not. I haven't been back to Fayetteville in years. But for the longest time, that was home.
So at what point in that scope of you have some terrific success at the D3 level as a player at Methodist, at what point does coaching start to enter your mind as a potential profession?
Yeah, that took a while because it's funny. So I go to Methodist, and I'm like, this is where I want to go to school. My dad goes, all right, well, what are you going to study? And I go, I don't know. I'll figure it out.
I'm going to play on the soccer team.
Yeah. And my dad says to me, well, you can't do soccer your whole life. and I was like, well, in hindsight, I have done soccer my whole life. But, at the time, I'm like, well, I'm not worried about that. I'll figure it out, along the way. So I go there. I play for 4 years. I graduate, and I have no clue what I want to do. So I was like, you know what? I'll go to graduate school. They'll give me 2 more years to try to figure things out. I go to graduate school. I'm set to graduate. I still have no clue what I'm going to. So I'm thinking
doctorate.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. I'm like, I'm going to get my PhD in exercise science, and
we're just going to keep this going.
Yeah, we're just going to, eventually maybe I'll figure out what it is I want to do. But in the meantime, I got offered a job actually doing soccer camps, but it was more like it was more like sales. And what I found out real quick was I don't really enjoy sales and didn't like sitting in an office all day. And so I started refereeing in the evenings just to get out and be around the game, and then that kind of morphed into some opportunities to coach club. And I said, you know what, I think I like this. And so I actually 2 years of trying to sell camps, I was like, you know what, I got an opportunity to coach where I had played at Methodist as a an assistant, and I said, I'm just going to do this, and wasn't really making enough money to make that a profession, so I ended up teaching high school, and then ended up coaching the high school team. And so I was coaching high school, I was coaching Division III college, and I was coaching club, and I was coaching ODP, and that's where I was like, you know what, I think I kind of found my niche, I found my calling, and that was where it kind of morphed into, after I think 4 years of doing all those, I was like, you know what, I just want to do college full time, and basically told told the principal at the school I was working at, I was like, all right, I'm done at the end of the year, and applied for literally every college job under the sun. And Mount Olive was the only one that said, okay, maybe there's some potential here, and that was it.
And now, was at that point when you're coaching all of these, you're kind of piecing together the puzzle and decide you want to go, and you're firing out resumes or whatever it was at the time. Was it specific to coaching women versus coaching men? Was that kind of the jumping off point once you got down that road? Obviously, you've been coaching women's soccer now at the collegiate level, and that's what you've done. But was it at that point just whatever? Was it just kind of happenstance that you landed on one side of the coin or another?
Yeah. It was really. I just enjoyed coaching, and the gender was irrelevant to me. Most of my first coaching jobs were on the boys' side. So I was coaching boys' club. I was coaching high school boys. I was assistant with a men's college team, and then the guy that was coaching the women's team at the high school I was at said, "Hey, I'm going to step down. Do you want to take over?" In North Carolina, the men played in the fall, the women played in the spring. So I go, "Yeah, I'll do that."
Yeah.
And then it just so happened that I got offered a women's club team. So now I'm coaching women's club. And I go, you know what? Coaching women's not that bad. It's actually not that much different, and there's a little bit less ego. They're a little bit.
I was going to say the
they're a little
difference
bit
is
more coachable.
Yeah, I was
right?
going to say some of the differences are a pro for sure.
So I said, you know what? I can do this. And so when I started applying for jobs at the college level, I was like, it didn't matter, male, female. I was applying for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just so happened that, again, the job that was open that Mount Olive called me about was a women's job, and I took that. And ever since then, I've been on the women's side, and obviously no regrets whatsoever. So.
What were the things that I think one of the things that has come up as we've talked to coaches is that first head coaching job, at the collegiate level? Obviously, you'd been doing it at high school and at club, but I think when you get to that level, even though it's not division, I mean, there's so much that's on your plate, and there's so much you can't prepare for until you're doing it. Do you remember kind of some of the big lessons and takeaways from like going through this for the first time? Clearly you weren't scared off by it. You've now made a long and productive career out of it, but what were some of those early lessons with jumping into that, leading a program for the first time?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things is, when you got your first head coaching job, you feel a lot of pressure to be successful. And, sometimes the pressure that I was putting on myself, you transfer to the players. And, I was probably at a young age, a bit intense, so I've mellowed in my age for sure. And, but yeah, I mean, I used to take every loss personal, and, would dwell on it for the next week, and wasn't fun to be around after a loss. I've come to realize that, look, winning and losing is not the end of the world, and it's much more fun to win. But, it's learning the lessons from the losses and not just dwelling on the fact that they scored more goals than you, but why did they score more goals than you, and what can we do to rectify that and fix that and make sure it doesn't happen the following week. But not to let it affect my, my everyday attitude for the rest of the week. So, but yeah, it was, a lot of lessons, to be honest. But one of the things that at Mount Olive where I was teaching. I was teaching as well. So I was 50% teaching, 50% coaching, and you just wear so many hats. I mean, I was wearing so many hats. I mean, this was, I don't even know, was this 20 years? I guess 20 years ago now, 22 years ago, something like that. That it was.
Trying to do some quick math based off the bio. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, 2003 was my first head coaching job. So,
yeah.
Mount Olive has changed a lot since then, in terms of resources and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, back then, I remember the men's coach was mowing the field and lining the field every week, and I was in class teaching, and it was just you had so much on your plate that it was hard to have time to now recruit and to It was a lot. So I'm super grateful for, where I'm at now and the resources that we have here, and, having multiple assistants. Back then, I think I had an assistant that might have been making a couple $100 maybe, So.
Well, it's amazing. And, I have been in this world not as long as you have, but my first job out of school was in 2010. and I was at the University of Georgia, so it doesn't get much bigger in terms of scope of and the Georgia in 2025 is unrecognizable to the Georgia that I went there as a freshman in 06, and just the scale of college athletics is so far beyond. I mean, what is at Temple now in 2025 would have blown the doors off of anything we had at probably the largest program in the country.
Yeah.
And it's not that long ago. And so you work your way through to Barton, up to UNLV, and then to Robert Morris, immediately preceding your time at Temple. And I mean, are you starting to develop as time goes on? And I mean, now you're kind of able to lay down this kind of repeated blueprint of success. And as you said, kind of embracing when there was a bigger, better opportunity out there, you were able to move and take advantage of that. And now that you've had the chance to build up some of that experience over the intervening 2 decades, what have you kind of felt like, in terms of now coming into this role at Temple, that you've been able to, I don't want to say, develop as a system, but just, the things that that work for you in this profession?
Yeah. Well, that's a tough question because every school has its own challenges and its own advantages. And so it's really, when you take a job, it's trying to figure out, okay, what is it that this school offers that is going to entice kids to want to come here? And so, you have to spend a little time, researching and learning about the university, and maybe it's also what's around the university, and selling those kind of things. Like for example, here at Temple, like we've got a great business school, right? So we really try to sell that. The fact that we've got a medical school, like not every school I've been at has those types of things,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's not really a cookie cutter, one size fits all. Again, it's very much specific to where you're at and what you have to offer. And you've got to make sure that you're educating the kids on, hey, here's what we have to offer, and hope that that's what they're looking for. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's, I'd like to think that I'm a good coach, but I know I'm not a good enough coach to mold marble out of clay, right? Like you need players that can play. And so recruiting's the key, and it's, finding players that can come in and make the program better, and then, hopefully you can, put them in the right system that makes them successful and develop them over the course of their 4 years. But that, you've got to go out and put the work in with the recruiting.
Well, I think it's an interesting point that you make, because there is sometimes you hear it spoken of in a pejorative way that we're in Philadelphia, you're in the city, it's going to be hard to recruit. It's going to be hard to recruit, particularly in women's sports. I think sometimes get a bad rap with that. And clearly you are coming off of a great couple of seasons, but particularly this great season at Robert Morris. You're going to have some options that are open to you when you have the success at that mid-major level. And it's not as if necessarily you are a Philly guy this isn't a homecoming for you. You're able to look at it with some objectivity as an outsider. And I think that gives you a really interesting perspective, because those of us that grew up here, we get it and we kind of understand what Philly's about, and you embrace that. But, I'm just curious kind of what your impression of that was, because I think if you really thought it was impossible or couldn't be done, you wouldn't take the job. You wouldn't be here. But, have you found now in a couple of years that it has been kind of what you thought it might be, in terms of there are some drawbacks, but there are some real opportunities to being here in Philadelphia as well?
Yeah, no, it's you do hear kind of some of the negatives about, North Philly and it's going to be tough to recruit, this, that, and the other. But I mean, when Arthur brought me here to visit, I mean, I was blown away. I'd never been on Temple's campus before. To be honest, I don't think I'd ever been in North Philly before. I mean, I'd been in Philly for soccer conventions, but that was all,
Yeah, there's really no reason you're at the convention center.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I was never much further north than that. So,
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I'd heard the stories, and I got here and saw what Temple had to offer in terms of the resources and the facilities and the conference that we're in, and I was like, man, there seems to be a ton of potential there, and then all that Philly has to offer. I mean, look, if you're going to be in a big city, yeah, you're you're going to have to, deal with, there's going to be some crime and there's going to be some things that you might not see in rural North Carolina, right? But to me, that was part of the challenge, but also I think it's easier to recruit to an urban environment where there is so much to do and there is so much to see, right? You're not, you can be in a small town in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, well, when kids aren't playing soccer and going to school, what are they doing? Idle hands and all that. They're going to find something to do, right? Here, at least you think, okay, well, maybe they're going to a Phillies game, or maybe they're going to an Eagles game, or maybe they're going to a concert. I mean, there's so much going on here, which is, wholesome and good fun, and I think that's what Temple has to offer, Philadelphia has to offer, and obviously the big city is not for everyone. We just got to find the kids that want this environment, right? And we watched Rocky in preseason, so we really trying to embrace that whole North Philly mindset, that grittiness, that blue collar mentality. We'll see. We're still working on it, right? It's a work in progress, trying to get that that mentality fully ingrained in our players. But yeah, no, I wouldn't have come. I mean, I was in a good situation at Robert Morris. It wasn't like I was. I mean, again, I don't know if I should say this living in Philly now, but I think Pittsburgh's a great city. I enjoyed my time there, right? I wasn't chomping at the bit to get out of Pittsburgh by any means.
Yeah.
But I just thought, man, something can be done at Temple on the women's soccer side that, and I just saw a lot. I saw so much potential, so much opportunity, and the challenge of trying to get something, trying to build something that hasn't been built before.
Did the movie land with the team? Because you're at the perfect, what was that, 76, right? So you're at the perfect age, and it's got like the good nostalgia, and I love it. But did it land?
Well, what's funny is we come out to Rocky, right?
Yeah.
And I would say we had a good number of players that had no clue, one, what that music was, two, why we came out to it, right? Like they just thought that was just some random music that maybe, I don't know,
some instrumental,
shuffled up on the playlist, and they're like, all right, yeah, this sounds fine.
Yeah.
So for the players that had never seen Rocky, it was great. Some of them, it was interesting because some of them that were coming here, I think some of our foreigners, the moms, were like, hey, you're going to Philly, you got to sit down and watch this. And so they watched it, a month or so before they came here.
Okay.
Right? They're like, hey, this is so yeah, I think it was good for them. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. You think Rocky's such an institution that everyone knows about that movie, and here we are with kids that they've got no clue. They've never even heard of the movie. They have no clue what it's about. So I had to say, well, have you seen Creed? They're like, yeah, we've seen Creed.
Yeah,
I said, okay, well, then let me tell you the backstory, right? Like, here's what Rocky is, right? Rocky was Creed's, I don't know, what would you call it, Godfather or something like that, whatever.
This is a prequel.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we only watched Rocky 1, though. We didn't get to Rocky 2. Maybe that's next preseason.
There you go. Yeah.
Rocky gets progressively less gritty and less blue collar as they go on.
You just got to skip Rocky 5. You'll be fine.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it was, I don't know. Like I said, I try to embrace, Philly and Temple and, where we're at and what we have to offer. And, it's, again, Rocky's such an iconic, part of Philly that it's kind of neat.
Well, for as many places and times that you've bounced around, both in coaching and in life, hoping that this is a good long stay for you. And again, just congratulations on everything thus far, and appreciate you taking some time to chat.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, Kevin. It's been great. I've enjoyed it, and appreciate your time.
All right, that's this week's episode of the Owl Pod. Have a great weekend, everyone. I want to thank my guest, Chris Shaw, and remind you that David and Amelia are back with an all-new episode on Tuesday. Check it out. Amazon, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast. You can check out the Owl Pod Tuesdays and Fridays. I want to thank our entire team, Justin Miller, Prince Moody, Christy Bannon, our executive producer, Dan Lobaz. I'm Kevin Copp. Thank you all so much for listening, everyone. Goodbye, and go Owls.